Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. This is our first workshop in our series of 4 and we're focusing on those short answer responses. So paper 1, part A, the 9-mark questions that you get in your exam. So just a little introduction of who I am. I've taught IB psychology now for over 20 years and I've been an examiner in the subject as well for over 15. I've also got a daughter who recently graduated from completing the IB Diploma as well, and I live in Australia. And I've created Diploma Insights because I was getting lots of requests for support from psychology students and teachers, and then realised that actually there's lots of students and teachers looking for support in other subjects. So Diploma Insights is myself and a small team of specialist IB teachers who are here to support students or teachers across Australia who are studying or teaching the IB Diploma programme. In our workshop today, I'm going to share some top tips with you along with a checklist of all possible short answer questions that you could get in paper 1. Now, did you know that paper 1 has got the highest weighting for both SL and HL students? So getting short answer questions right is really important. Every year, examiners are seeing students who clearly have revised really well, but when it comes to writing their paper 1, especially the short answer questions, they're just missing out on some things that are stopping them getting a 6 or a 7. So what do you think the percentage of students is who actually do come out with a 7 overall? Out of around 26,000 students who sit the November exam each year, what percentage of them do you think are getting 7s? So it's quite low for both HL and SL. So hopefully our workshop today is going to help you be able to improve your short answer question responses and improve your grade to get above the average grade, which is around about, a high 4, low 5 for psychology students. These top tips are going to help you be able to get towards that 6 or a 7. Okay, so I'm going to share 5 top tips with you, including one that involves an alien. More about that later. First of all, there are 2 types of short answer questions in paper 1. I call them type A and type B, and it's really useful to understand how these are different and how you might structure your responses differently depending on the type of question. So type A questions usually involve the word study in the actual question itself, whereas type B short answer questions don't actually put the word study in there, but we still need to refer to a study in a type B type of short answer question. Here are 2 possible short answer questions. They are both on the same topic, but they are worded slightly differently. One is a type A question, it's asking you to focus on the study, and one is a type B style of question that's asking you to refer to a study rather than fully focus on it in your response. So which one can you identify here as a type A that wants you to fully focus on describing the study, and which one's the type B? We'll look at how to approach these questions and how to structure our responses in this workshop as well. Now, in type A or type B questions for short answers, we have to always include research. And that's important, even if it doesn't actually say the word research or study in the question, we always have to include research. Do we include more than one study? Generally not, just for time purposes, and most times the question might actually use the word one study in the actual question. So generally 1 study is the golden rule for short answer questions, and if you include 2, you have to be careful because only the first one is the one that would actually be credited. So if your first study is very short or it's actually inaccurate or not relevant to the question, it could gain you no credit at all. So 1 study in all short answer question responses. So let's look at how we include that study, and let's look at the 2 different types of questions. So here's the type A style of question, which is asking you to describe 1 study all about the effect of 1 neurotransmitter on human behaviour. So we want to include the study in the middle really of our short answer response, and we want to give as much detail as we can about the study. We really want to show everything about the study because this question is asking you to describe 1 study, and when it says describe 1 study, it wants the detailed information. It doesn't want like a summary, an overview. It wants to know as much as you can possibly recall about that study. What method, what design, did it use matched pairs, did it use repeated measures, was it independent measures? What type of experiment was it? Really think about key details. If you can remember the number of participants, great. If you can remember how they were allocated or what sampling procedure was used, really try to describe as much as you can about the study. So in this response, your main part is going to be describing that study. And that's going to be sandwiched in between you explaining the topic first of all as well. So show your knowledge about neurotransmitters here. Make sure you clearly state what neurotransmitter you're going to focus on and what human behavior that neurotransmitter actually has that effect on. So really make that clear before you describe your study. And then you need to have a link, and we're going to explain what we mean by linking in this workshop as well to help you understand how to finish off your short answer question response. Now, in a type B style question, we're still going to include that study and we're still going to put that in the middle, sandwiched in between the topic and the link. But for a type B style of question, we are going to spend more time on describing the effect, which is the topic rather than the study. So we're going to include the study, but maybe we don't have to go into so much detail as we did for the type A. And we think about giving a good detailed summary of the study. And we make sure that we give some more time to describe the effect. This is kind of like where you're going to need to have your knowledge of biology, really, about the brain as well. So, what part of the brain does the actual neurotransmitter affect, and how does that then affect human behavior? And try to be specific rather than just saying, oh, it affects memory. Like, what type of memory and how does it impact the brain to impact that particular type of memory? So you want to be giving detailed description about the effect of that neurotransmitter and then referring to that study that's relevant to that neurotransmitter that you've chosen. And again, we have to end with a clear and explicit link. More about that coming next. Okay, so we've looked at type A and type B type of questions. We know that we've got to include research in all short answer questions. Top tip number 3 is about recycling studies. Students are often unsure whether they can use the same study in their exam in multiple questions. If it's relevant, yes, it's no problem at all. There's no penalties for you using the same study in different questions, but it has to be relevant. And this is where you could use a question in your short answer question responses in part A. You might use that same study again in your essay response question as well. If it's relevant, you can use it. But when you're revising, you want to try and pick studies that you're able to recycle. So, does anybody know who this lady is? Maybe not. If I show you this picture, hopefully that will jog your memory. And if you've studied Maguire, this is Eleanor Maguire, the very famous psychologist who did the taxi driver study as well. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, and lots of students don't realise that she was actually a woman as well. So Maguire is a great study to use for so many different topics. So it's a really good study to revise because you could use it probably in about 4 or 5 different possible questions. So try to, when you're revising, choose studies smartly that maybe have multiple uses. Not all studies will, but there'll definitely be many that you can use for multiple style of questions. Now, top tip number 4, this is where the alien comes in. It's all about this link, the end of your short answer question responses. How do you clearly show a link that's going to allow you to get a 7, an 8 or a 9 out of 9 in your responses for short answer questions? So going forward, when you next write your short answer question, I want you to imagine you're not writing it to a human, to a teacher, to an examiner, you're writing it to an alien. And this alien comes from a different planet, where on their planet they don't link things together. So this alien comes to visit Earth one day, wanders around and sees like loads of humans eating ice cream and is really baffled and confused. Why are humans all eating ice cream on a really hot day? Now to us, it is so obvious why on a hot day we tend to eat ice cream. But remember, on the planet, the alien doesn't understand links. So it's our job to explain the link between hot weather and ice creams to this alien. So we might sit the alien down, have a conversation and explain, well, hot temperature makes humans feel hot, and ice cream, it's a cold, refreshing substance that humans like to eat. So they eat it, it cools them down, and the hot humans feel happy because they're cool and nice and refreshed. That's it. Alien's now happy. He understands this link between ice cream and hot weather. Even though it was so obvious to us, we had to explicitly make that link to the alien. And that's what you need to do in your short answer questions. Not talk about ice cream, but explain how your study that you chose links to the question. Now, to do that effectively, you're going to need probably about 2 or 3 sentences. So here's an example of how you could link the Anantova study that looked at ACH and spatial memory, and how you would finish your short answer response with a 3-sentence link to clearly explain how the results of the study that you chose link back to that question all about how one neurotransmitter affects one human behavior. So it's really obvious to you, it's probably obvious to me, to your teacher, to the examiner, but you need to put it in writing to be able to get a mark in the top mark band bracket. So to get more than 6, you have to have a clear and explicit link. If you just write 1 sentence, it's probably not going to be very clear and explicit, and that probably means you're going to stay in the mid-mark band bracket, which is like a 4, a 5 or a 6. So to get 7, 8 or 9, you need to finish all your short answer question responses with a clear and explicit link. Take time. Imagine you're writing to that alien who doesn't understand why you put that study into your question, into that response. You need to take time and explain why that study links to that question. Okay, so to recap, we've looked at the 2 possible types of short answer questions. We know we've got to include research, and we want to try and reuse research when we can. So when we're revising studies, try to pick studies that you can use in multiple short answer question responses. That link and that alien is so important to get a 7, 8 or a 9 in your short answer question responses. But finally, there's one rule that you should not do. There's one thing in your short answer question responses, no matter how tempting it feels, you should never ever include, does anybody know what it is? Evaluation. So if you put evaluation into your short answer question responses, it's going to actually distract the focus of your response away from the question, and that could prevent you again getting into the top mark band of a 7, 8 or a 9. So never ever ever include any evaluation. I hope you found that useful, and I hope you'll be able to join us in our next workshop, which is all focusing on those essay response questions, the long answer, those 22 markers. So top tips in workshop 2 coming up for long answer responses. And as promised, here is a checklist of all the possible short answer questions that could come up in paper 1. Now you could use this to revise paper 1 fully if you're an SL student, because these could also be essay questions as well. You'll notice that some of them are in italics. Italics can only be asked at a short answer question level. So for example, the topic there about agonists and antagonists, you can never get an essay about using those words. They will only be used to formulate short answer questions. High level students, you could also use this as well, of course, to revise everything for short answer questions. But for essays, you would need to make sure you're also revising your high level extension that you've done as well. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hope to see you in our next workshop. In the meantime, if you have any questions about psychology or any of your other diploma subjects you're looking for support, don't hesitate to reach out to me at insights@diplomainsights.com.